Paul Dennett, the award-winning cricket podcaster as part of Cricket Daily and also Cricket Unfiltered, joins us once again on the Overnight Crowd after a very intriguing day of Ashes cricket from the Gabba. G'day, Paul.
G'day, Heater. How you going, mate?
Yeah, good, thank you, mate. So thanks for the time once again. Now, day one, day two, Australia well and truly on top as expected. And then today, the long-awaited English fight back with their skip, Joe Root, just simply unwilling to let the Aussies run away with it, wasn't he?
Yeah, it's an extraordinary sort of turnaround. It was day one and day two dominated by Australia, and really the first half of day three as well. But that first morning, Australia piling on the agony for England, and then two quick wickets, and it looked like it was only going one way. But that's the nature of Test cricket. That just when you think you've got it worked out, the unexpected occurs. And it's England. They may well get something out of this Test match, but they must still be looking back and think we could not have done much more wrong in terms of sending Australia, not sending Australia in, picking the wrong side, dropping catches, having wickets taken off no balls, doing everything to possibly lose it. And here they are, 2 wickets down, only 50-odd short of Australia, and with a real chance of doing something on day 4.
Any highlights for you across the first 2 days? I was going to ask for conclusions you're able to draw, but you've drawn a few of them there about the English side already.
The first ball had to be the highlight. The Harmison ball that everyone's talking about 15 years later, and older people are talking about the first ball of the Ashes of 94-95 when Michael Slater banged a cut shot through point for 4 and sort of set the tone for those Ashes. And poor old Rory Burns, this is going to be talked about forever and ever with him. So that was certainly a highlight. That day one for Pat Cummins to take 5 wickets to absolutely everything to go right for him was pretty exciting as well. But then Travis Head, I love seeing a player play their natural aggressive game in Test cricket. And for all the talk of you've got to bat slowly and value your wickets, sometimes the Adam Gilchrist style is the one that really works. And so that was a refreshing, delightful inning, played at a point where the Test match was in the balance, and it looked like it was going to be a definite match-winning innings for Australia. And then it's all been turned on its head. Australia obviously still in front, but things could get interesting on day 4 if England can survive. I think it's about 10 overs till the new ball. If they can get through that period, get through the new ball, get into the lead, Australia will be getting nervous pretty quickly.
Just back on Mitch Starc getting that first baller that started it all off. I'm not sure if they have a name for the duck on the first ball of the first Test of a series. I've seen a few people banding about the crystal duck, though. Any thoughts on that, Paul?
Well, you wouldn't want to call it the Burns duck. That'd be pretty nasty. They're talking about if you got a king pair in the match, that maybe they're trying to think of some sort of term for that, getting out off the first ball. Well, if it's going to be the first ball of both innings, then maybe that could have been called the Burns duck. But the stat that everyone's relating with great joy is that prior to this innings, Burns had batted 54 times in Test cricket, and on every occasion except for 2 he had faced the first ball, and the 2 occasions he didn't was when he'd opened with a night watcher, and so basically that was their job to take the new ball. And so because he was on the king pair, he said to his opening partner Haseeb Mahmood, mate, you can take it. So I saw Izzy Westbury, an English commentator, saying that's probably even a braver thing to do, knowing the sledging he'll cop from the Aussies when they realised that he didn't want to face the new ball, the first ball in the second inning.
It doesn't raise your confidence for the rest of the Ashes series for Burns, does it? If that's already in his brain, second innings of the first Test.
No, but I would have done the same thing, because the one thing that could destroy your confidence more would be to get out off the first ball of the second innings. And look, it's refreshing for me, who I sort of like it when the Australians play with a bit more grace. I'm not sure if this Australian side would be quite so keen to sledge. Under Pat Cummins already, they've got seem to have a very pleasant disposition. Travis Head, when he got hit by the beamer late on day 2, was very gracious in the way that he handled it, albeit it's a bit easy when you've got 100 not out and you realise you haven't been actually injured. But I'm really liking the sort of gentlemanly way that the Australians are playing the game.
Kerry O'Keefe saying today that Australia's inability to take wickets with the old ball has been and continues to be a massive problem for this team. Do you have any ideas on just how they could try and fix that?
Well, I think that firstly, you've got to accept that the pitch in this particular game has now flattened out considerably, and that you just have to look at the difference in the way that it looked. They showed a highlight. They showed that first ball again, and I just got a shock as to how much the pitch has changed over the course of the match. So when you've got Joe Root, who is clearly the best test batter in the world, and he's in the form of his career, then on a pitch that's flattening out, it's kind of not surprising that he's going to score some runs. The intriguing thing is, why didn't Josh Hazlewood bowl anymore? He only bowled 8 overs. And, Pat Cummins and Josh Hazlewood are the two best bowlers we have by a long way. I think it was Labuschagne plus Green bowled 11 overs. So that doesn't make any sense. In the post-match press conference, Labuschagne said that there's no injury to the Hazlewood, and that they're mainly intending to keep him fresh for the next day. That just doesn't sound realistic. The time to bowl him was in that third session when he didn't get a bowl. So that was perplexing to me, and it'll be interesting to see if he comes out and takes the ball tomorrow morning.
Well, especially seeing as he's wearing Joe Root like a cheap suit at the moment, and you would have thought he'd be getting through a lot of work, seeing as how much Joe Root has been at the crease today.
Absolutely, and that, as I said before, if they can get through that new ball, then the thing that's so dangerous about this England side, that you look at the rest of their lineup, they are the dream sort of team to have when they have a license to play with freedom. Now, they don't have that license yet, but if they could start to get to the point where they were getting a nice lead, then you look at some of the players, Pope and Stokes and especially Butler, and even Wokes can hit the ball. He's a very fine timer of the ball. Mark Wood can give the ball an enormous crunch with some skill as well. So they've got the side that if they happen to, heaven forbid, get to lunch without losing a wicket, they could really apply the pressure as the afternoon wears on.
Yeah, Butler was already playing that way when they were 5 down for not many in the first innings, wasn't he? So he's looking for an excuse at the moment. On to Pat Cummins, captaining his first test, as you were saying, a bit of a dream start, getting the 5 wickets in the first innings as well. As we see more of a defence from England in the second dig, are you starting to see any of the warning signs that we were told about with a bowler captain, staying on too long with his own spells or not making the changes he should be making?
No, I mean, I think that it's far too early to say that. I don't think that's going to happen either. The only thing is, why didn't Hazlewood bowl? And I think there must be some reason there that he, not necessarily saying that he's injured, but surely he's probably got something that was, he thought, look, I need to sleep on it and I'll be better tomorrow morning. I think that strategically to have held him back if there's nothing wrong with him, then I would say that's a mistake, but that's not a mistake caused by exhaustion or anything else. That would purely have been a team tactic, which I just can't imagine being the case. So I don't think that it matters that much, because I think that there is the brains trust there, headed by Smith and others, and that I think it's overstated how significant bowling changes are. And I mean, there's a well-worn quote from Richie Benaud saying that captaincy is 90% luck and 10% ability, but don't try it without that 10%. And I think that's a fairly accurate way of saying it, that most of what you do as a captain is fairly standard, but just every now and again, it's that little bit of skill to that key to be aggressive or make that smart move that makes the difference. The one thing that was a little bit disappointing, but I mean, he's in common with every other captain, is that he did start to push the field back more defensively as that partnership went on, and that just seems to be the modern trend. It doesn't please me, but that's the way that it seems to be done.
Travis Head, unbelievable in his innings of 152 at better than a run or ball. He faced it all, including a head-high beamer. Confidence showing, ticking off his selection and probably cementing his spot in the team as well. Yeah,
absolutely. It's quite amazing how quickly things can change, because they flashed a graphic up on the screen making the point there's been some very talented left-handed South Australians over the years who've not played as many Test matches as their talent might have justified. David Hooks, Darren Lehman, Wayne Phillips, and now Travis Head. But Travis Head, when they had him up there, because he was not out around about 100 at the time, already his Test average is now sort of marching nicely into the mid-40s. And once you get to that level, that is a career to be very, very proud of. The old benchmark was if you can average above 40 in Test cricket, then you've had a very good career. So it's amazing what a few weeks can do, and from being doubtful as to being in the side, he can now face a very happy prospect of being a certain selection for the rest of the Ashes, and then look forward to potentially seeing if he can come to grips with subcontinental surfaces, as that's what we're going to go for tours over the course of the next year or so.
Alex Carey looking great in his first test outing with the gloves for Australia as well. He's been tidy, efficient, and we haven't really noticed him, which some say is a good sign of a good keeper.
Yeah, well, he certainly is a good keeper. He's a good player. Didn't miss out with the bat in that first innings, but I'm sure that will change. And I think that he's a guy that everyone seems to like as well. I've never met him, but I find myself warming to him from afar and wishing him to do well. And there's no reason to think that he won't. Yeah, certainly looks like he's had a pretty tidy start to his career. Hasn't needed to do too much, but what he's done well.
Mitch Starc with 2 wickets in the first innings, some nice lower order runs when he had a chance with the bat, and then one so far in the second innings. How are you finding the output from Mitch in this first test as far as his bowling output has gone?
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting because, I mean, up until the final third of today, then it was all rave reviews. And it's an important point you make around the lower order runs, because he does score them. And I personally think he probably should bat above Pat Cummins. He should bat at number 8 and Cummins at number 9. I really think that tomorrow is going to ultimately decide the way that he is reviewed in this test match. That up till now, all the ticks for the fine first innings performance, got the wicket of Hamid, although, it's a bit of a strangle down the leg side. It'll be interesting to see what he can do tomorrow. Can he come in, take a couple of quick wickets and help inspire an Australian victory? On the flip side, if he goes the journey and doesn't look like he can deliver much, then some of those question marks will start to reappear. I'm sure he's still going to be picked for the second test in Adelaide. Maybe that would hurry up the notion of trying to get Richardson into the side for the third test.
Outside of the first ball wicket from Mitch Starc, Travis Head's 100, and the great innings today from Milan and also Root, Josh Hazlewood's 2 catches in the first innings have been just probably the top tier highlights of this test match so far. It's just unbelievable to see a fast bowler doing that, isn't it?
Especially, not that tall people can't be athletic, but I can always remember one day at the cricket where I just happened to be sitting right at ground level and he was fielding near me, and I just looked at him and thought, he is so tall. You don't quite realise it on the television, that he is monumentally tall. And you would look at his body shape and say in years gone by, he was someone that you would hide at fine leg and hope that the ball never went near him. And I was watching the highlights of the famous 1981 test a while ago where when Ian Botham won the game for England. And during the Australian innings when we got bowled out, Graham Dilley, the England fast bowler, took a catch on the fine leg boundary, and the commentators were raving about it. And it was a sitter. By today's standards, it was just when it was high and he got his hands to it, no problems at all. The 2 catches that Hazlewood took were absolutely stunning in comparison to that. I think someone from 1981 would have, you wouldn't expect the best player in the team to do that. So it shows how much the standards have improved, and it also shows how hard and how professionally the Australians approach their cricket. That even a fast bowler like that can be relied upon to take really important catches.
Well, that was the follow-up question. Can you imagine the quicks of the 70s and 80s making a dive for catches like that? So if they're, getting rave reviews for just a dolly down at fine leg, there's no chance that they'd even be flying for things like these back then.
I suppose, to be fair to them, what they probably say is that there would always be the 1 or 2 that were just naturally gifted. Yeah. And they would say, the day after the game, that they were off to work in a 9-to-5 job. They didn't have the luxury of practicing all day long. You hear it a bit in rugby league terms that, these days every player can pass a 20-metre torpedo pass and nail it straight to the receiver, whereas 30 or 40 years ago, the halfback might be able to do that and no one else. And so that's kind of maybe the standard, that the very top fielders would have been top fielders in most eras, but those who might have been also-rans have now, through the dint of hard work enabled by professionalism, raised their games as high as they possibly can.
Staying on fast bowlers, we knew days out from the start of the first test that Jimmy Anderson would sit for this match, but don't call it an injury though, and then Stuart Broad was not picked. What sort of odds would we have gotten for predicting that before the start of the series?
Well, they've taken 1,100 test wickets between them, so maybe 1,100 to 1. And I think the fact that you look at the bowling figures that poor old Jack Leach put up, and you compare that to what Stuart Broad might have done, and it sort of harkens back to what I said at the start, that England have done everything wrong, yet they are still in a very competitive position in the match. it'll be interesting to see whether Jack Leach plays any further role in the series.
To be fair to Jack Leach, he did pick up the first century on the tour for England, so, he's got that going for him. But what have you made of the selected England bowlers' efforts in the first innings? On a bit of a hiding to nothing, but a couple of good signs eventually emerging along the way?
I've been very impressed with Mark Wood because I was a little bit dubious about this narrative that's been coming out of England for a couple of years now, that the only way you can win in Australia is with raw pace. And I sort of said for every Mitchell Johnson performance and Jeff Thompson performance back in the day, there's plenty of others that have bowled just at a more sedate clip that have been extremely accurate, and that has been the key to success. And I thought Mark Wood, if he sprays it around too much, could be a selection that they come to regret. But I thought he bowled excellently, and I thought that Ollie Robinson, as it was going to be the case, as expected, bowled really well as well. He gave the England fans a scare, looking like he'd come down with a bit of an injury, but he got through that. And I think that he's going to be someone who's going to be a real handful throughout the rest of the series. So when you factor in now that there are going to be 2 day-night matches in the remainder of the series, and you look at it, Anderson, Broad, Robinson, Wood, and Wokes will come into his own in those conditions as well. The England bowling lineup is starting to shape pretty impressively.
Their second lineup, the England Lions, are in a match at the moment in progress against Australia A. Michael Nessa doing himself favours aplenty there, having the Lions batting lineup in absolute all sorts with a great fiver as well, didn't he?
Yes, he's kind of the forgotten man at the moment. That he's been in and around the Australian setup for so long without cracking it through for a test match. The next cab off the rank is going to be Jai Richardson, but we saw it with India last summer that they, through necessity, had to go through quite a few different options as far as bowling is concerned. So he's still there and thereabouts, and he's another one that would be very favoured by, I think, those day-night conditions. So if he gets a pink ball in his hand at some stage later on in the series, it's certainly not beyond the realms of possibility that he could play a role for Australia.
It feels like we know what the sort of possibilities or the prospects are for some of the bowling attack, but what about for the batting element of the Australia A squad? Is it just an exercise in having guys, jogging on the spot in the right format of cricket in case of a worst-case injury scenario?
I think it's also, an opportunity for them to get a bit of red ball form before they then head off to sort of big bash cricket. I think it's also for Usman Khawaja, especially. It was an opportunity that so far he hasn't taken. He didn't make a score in the first innings. Not many of them did, but that they may well be considering Marcus Harris's position in the side. I think that they will, as long as Australia don't lose this game. If Australia were to lose this game and he was to fail in the second innings, then the pressure would come right for that second test match, because nothing galvanises selectors' determination more than a home loss in the Ashes. They get very ruthless very quickly. If that wasn't to be the case, I think they will give him Adelaide, but I don't know that they'd give him much longer than that. If he failed in Adelaide, then maybe we could see Usman Khawaja come in as an opener.
Thanks so much for the time once again, Paul. On the way out, mate, a prediction for the morning. Does Joe Root make his first Test 100 in Australia?
Yes, I think he will. Yep, I think he will. And in terms of a prediction for the match, I don't know. I can't quite believe it that Australia, I was looking at cricket before I came on, that Australia is now only regarded as a 75% chance of winning it. We are a 1 in 4 chance of not winning this game where we've dominated for so long. I'll take the safe option and I'll say I still think that Australia will win, but I say that without much conviction, and I might be asking you to delete this in a couple of days' time.
No worries, mate. I'll keep the finger hovering over the mouse button, but great stuff, Paul. Enjoy the rest of the test and also the weekend, mate, and we'll catch up again soon.
Sounds good, Heather. Thanks, mate.
Paul Dennett, the award-winning cricket podcaster, joining us on the Overnight Crowd. So if you'd like to hear a little bit more of some Paul Dennett and get some more Paul Dennett into your life, go and search out the Cricket Daily and also Cricket Unfiltered podcasts, and really thank Paul for his time and knowledge joining us on